Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go.
Hello, RailCats fans, and welcome back to another edition of the RailCats Talk podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Savedich, and the postseason awards that I've finally gotten around to doing. Point Streak decided that it wanted to work finally, and I had the time to do it. I know it's been I was trying to wait until like the end of everything. I was gonna wait until everything was done with the American Association, the Miles Wolff Cup, and the the Baseball Champions League. Congratulations, the Kansas City Monarchs are winning the Miles Wolff Cup, second time in 3 years, and the Fargo Moorhead and / All Stars of the American Association now winning the Baseball Champions League. Those were entertaining and fun. I will get in more of those, that kind of stuff, like later on in the off season. Off season can be very long, and I know probably things will wrap up or start ramping up in like December or January, kind of like what it did last year. I don't know if Lamar Rogers is going to be that kind of person again this year that is going to ramp up where they're just signing everyone in like January. So that stuff I'll probably break down more of the season, not maybe as a whole, but like review the record and what everyone else in the league kind of did, and then maybe look at the pitching staff and look at the infield and the outfield, or maybe break down certain individual players, or just kind of looking at that aspect of it. So I want to start out with the awards. My personal awards, I had, even though the season didn't go very well for the RailCats, there was still a lot of people that were award worthy, that, necessarily, that really shined. I mean, you have your all-stars of Jesus Mariaga, DJ Wilkinson, and LG Castillo, but there was certain players that really kind of outshine the rest, and the realistically it comes down to the three players that I really thought really shined, and even the fourth player really shined. The fourth player that I'm talking about is my fourth award ish, is the most improved, and that's just, I'll get into the meaning of all that before I start. But I'm just saying that, so the awards that I'm going over are MVP, most improved, defensive player of the year, rookie of the year, and pitcher of the year is what I'm going to be kind of looking at. Just the main kind of four to a certain extent. Maybe I'll look, next year, maybe expanding it a little bit further. But this year, I think it was just a kind of good starting point and a feeling out process on that portion of it. So, like I said, this is just mostly just going to be the awards, and just talk about the player that won the award and the reason behind the award. I mean, obviously, like MVP and rookie of the year and defensive player of the year are kind of, they're all kind of self-explanatory to a certain extent. Most improved as well. They're all kind of self-explanatory, but in my meaning behind it as well. Maybe next year I'm looking to change like the MVP to something different than just most valuable player, just kind of like wordplay a little bit. I don't know if anyone's got any ideas. Be sure to some ideas down there as well. And then as also going through this list, tell me who your favorite, or what, not your favorite, but what your award winner would be on the team. So I'm gonna start out with MVP, just because this one was one of the two difficult ones to kind of choose. Really, my MVP really could have gone to three people. It could have gone to Jesus Mariaga, it could have gone to Gio Diaz, and it could have gone to DJ Wilkinson. But ultimately, I ended up picking Jesus Mariaga. And reason why I went with him, he led the teams in games played at 98. He led the teams um, in RBIs at 66. He was first in triples at 5, first in doubles at 22. He was second on the team at 103 hits, and second in the team in home runs at 9. I know he kind of had a bit of a struggle, I would say, I think in like the beginning of July, and kind of throughout, like, when you're looking at his numbers, there's not like a lot of zeros in the hit column next to his name, kind of, certain extent. And hi, Rue, thanks for jumping on the back of my chair. That's Rue, everyone. I don't know if you probably haven't met her. Um, she's the oldest cat, or the oldest animal of the house. I'm sorry to get distracted off the side of that. Anyways, he is. When he was going, the rest of the team was kind of going. When the offensive numbers were there, and he was really building towards a productive game, that's when the rest of the team really win. And he was, I would say, you know, last year it was the offense kind of ran through Lingua, but this year I think with Jesus coming back, I think that's who the offense ran around, was Mariaga. Everyone else really had downish numbers. When you're looking, when I get into like the comparison from last year to this year, numbers were really down in most areas where people really were productive last year, and that'll kind of lead into, was this really a coaching issue or was it a player issue? I know I'm gonna have a split down the middle on that, or maybe more of a pissed off on one side than the other side, but that's why we do this, right? It's just kind of throwing facts and looking at statistics and other things like that as well. But that's getting off the point of, I really, I think going into this year, Mariaga got a lot more hype around him, especially with the baseball World Classic happening, him playing for Colombia, and he wasn't out. He wasn't. Uh, if you didn't really watch the games that he played, like, offensively, he really wasn't productive, but fielding wise, he was amazing. Like, I think it was just one of those, and you still see that throughout the rest of this year. But I think his hype was a lot higher because going into the season, the American Association basically had him be the poster boy of the season. And I just think with the RailCats, he kind of got overlooked in some of his aspects as well, on that. So moving on from MVP, I'm going to go to most improved, and this is someone who struggled out of the gate and then ended up being a staple in the bullpen. And this was a guy that I really thought was a handful of games away from being released, and that's Odie Nunez. He really, to me, so when we just looking at his numbers, he started with a 27 ERA, and that was, I know it was like first game, and he pitched like 1 inning and gave up like 5 runs. Obviously, the ERA is going to be, was it 23? I forget what it was, but it was a big number, and he had a lot of big numbers basically through the first 7 appearances. It was 3 to 5, and it was a lot, and you know. And then at the end of the year, he ended up dropping to like a 4.82 in the ERA. But first 7 appearances that he had, he gave up 14 earned runs and 11.2 innings. That was from like the May 11th to June 1st. And I really thought if he was going to get, his 10th appearance, and his numbers were still going to be really high. I mean, before the downfall, really, he reached 9 a couple times in late June, but really after June and mid July, his numbers dropped by half, and it kind of continually went down. I know it's, you don't really want to look at the ERA, but looking at the ERA in this aspect of showing his improvement that he went through the rest of the year was great. I mean, he was a guy that Lamar Rogers ended up really looking at and being a staple in the bullpen, just like Yohan Valdez and DJ Wilkinson. Like those were the guys that earned Lamar Rogers' trust, and I really wasn't high on Adi Nunez. I just think it may have taken that 8th appearance, that 9th, the 10th to kind of get acclimated to the American Association, and that's what exactly he did. Because from June 4th, he pitched in June 4th to the end of the season, he pitched in 52 innings, and he gave up only 16 earned runs and 18 unearned runs. So that's impressive to go through, that hard part of your 7 appearances and your, 11 innings, and then span that out to 52 innings and be, just give up the 16 runs. Like, just the amount of him being that successful, and there was I think really, if it wasn't for Cleburne, there was 2 times he faced Cleburne, he gave up 4 runs. If you took those away, the total of the 8 runs, you're looking at really 6 earned runs, which is really crazy to think at that portion that he was at, that's how dominant he really was. You know, Sometimes you run in a hot team in Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland series are always crazy between the 2 teams, and sometimes you just got to mark that up as the team that you're playing and the scores and all that other stuff. But this is the stuff that I'll be going over, obviously, at more into the off season. So defensive player of the year. This is the one I also kind of struggled with. I guess there was 3 awards, but really I wanted to base this one off of purely numbers. And the guy I had originally slotted, I changed my mind because the one thing I also get into this because Kevin and Rob on This Week in Association, by the time this comes out, which is Wednesday, the day that this actually came out, the 18th, they had they did like a good, bad, and ugly game, and the first question was point streak. And if you follow me on Twitter, you would know that I had a bit of a frustration with point streak the other day. So, but what I find frustrating about the point streak was that I had to go, instead of just like showing the fielding percentage of everyone, I had to go over and then I had to find each which I could have really gone to Baseball Reference and done this, but maybe I want to do my own little math because Baseball Reference is a superior stat platform. But that's beside the point. I had to go to each individual position, and the player that won Defensive Player of the Year is Gio Diaz. And he is a staple of what a defensive player should be, and playing defensive player and playing it at a high level and being good wherever he went. He played second most of the year, he played short, he played third, he played left, and he played center. Like, there's 5 positions you're playing on the field, and he could probably play right, he probably could play first, he could probably catch. Like, he could probably play every position that you need him at. I know 30 only played like 14 games, but the rest of them he played it are not 14 games, 14 innings. The rest of them are at least 31 innings that he played. But with me adding all that up, he ended up having a 994, and Jesus Mariaga actually ended up having a 992. Like I said, his ability to surpass a lot of people, outside of left field. That was Will Deckard kind of he had a 1,000% percentage in fielding. He led everywhere at the fielding. Now, granted, like third base, he didn't have an error, and center field, he didn't have an error. Those were like the 2 positions that he really didn't play much. Just because Jesus Mariaga, Avi's at center, but really the one clunker game that stood out to me was when Woodworth got hurt, and this was Gio's first time really playing second and trying to prove himself at that position, and he made a lot of throwing errors, a lot of, I think there were a couple in total he had like 7 errors in total, between 5 positions, 7 errors, whatever the case may be. But it was just like, I think that was like this worst defensive game because he was trying to prove that he should be there, and that's something that you want to see in general. But um just looking at what he was able to do was great. And I don't think a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that aspect. And the reason I wanted to bring it to numbers, because Jesus was my other guy. I mean, he only had 2 errors all year. He plays center field with grace and ease, and we just all know his defensive ability. But I really wanted to break it down to numbers. And don't get me wrong. Gio had a lot more opportunities. 7 errors, but he still had a 994. Jesus not had I think 2-ish, 3-ish errors, and had a 992. Like, obviously that's what mistakes happen, and a lot of times, like, uh, at center field, if the ball bounces wrong and the ball gets away from you, sometimes they mark that as an error. But really being able to play all over the place is really why he won this for me. And I was hoping that the numbers were going to kind of back me up in putting him in this position. And, you know, you guys might say, well, why don't you make it like a co-award? I forgot to mention this, a co-award kind of thing. I don't like necessarily doing co-awards. I think if you win an award, you're the one that wins this award. I know in MLB you have the AL and NL. And I wish they would get rid of that and it just be strictly AL or NL, or whoever the player is gets it. The rules are all identical, and all leagues are like this except the MLB. Every league has an MVP, not 2 MVPs, and not 2 Gold Glove, defensive players of the year. They don't have those. They have one, and I think we just want to get out of this realm. We're so in the realm in this world of uh, being able to hand everyone a trophy to a certain extent, and I want that. Now obviously if they had all the same exact numbers, okay, I get that. That's like, hey, these people played identically the same, and there's my argument. Like, I can understand, but there's differences, there's nuances, and to have a better fielding position and play 5 positions on the field, I think just automatically you win defensive player of the year because you're being able to play everywhere. Like I said, he could have been my MVP. But it just, who put who, where, what, why, Geo. It was one of those. That's why I ended up going with Jesus. He was just the more not offensive driven. I mean, he was offensive driven. He stolen bases and that kind of stuff. But I just think Jesus was the guy that bring in those runs, even though Geo was the one that had more offense. I forget what the term is. Offensive driven kind of numbers, potential scoring plays and stuff like that. But this next award, within this, I should say, this next player wins. Well, this next player I'm going with for Rookie of the Year is going to be DJ Wilkinson. And the reason I go with Wilkinson over Gio Diaz is that Wilkinson is a true rookie, and he was dominant all year. Gio was dominant all year. He was these two were probably the most consistent players for the RailCats. But I just went with DJ just based on the aspect of he was the one that he went from college to the American Association. Gio played in the Pioneer League last year. So I think it was just one of those, this was kind of a little bit easier to kind of go with, just basing it off of, at first I kind of had both of them, but then I was like, no, I just really want to make it one, and Wilkinson really deserves it. he actually deserves some kind of postseason award. I know really wanted him to be pitcher of the year, or reliever of the year, but you kind of go through the numbers, and he had really, if it wasn't for that last game against Milwaukee, his numbers would have been impressive. So he's also the pitcher of the year for the RailCats. I don't think anyone was surprised by that. I think if Chris Irwin was healthy, he would have been a guy that I would be like, yeah, you know what, he could probably won it too. But Wilkinson was just a killer all year. Um, he was dominant. He came into all different types of roles, and he ended up being the closer. And I there was a comment that was made earlier in the year about how I'd like to see Wilkinson's numbers of runs actually given up, because he was put in situations of bases loaded, no outs, or one out, runner on third and second, or tight game, runner on third, or runners on the corners and no outs, or one out, or whatever the case may be. And he was put in a lot of situations that I think really molded him to what he was, but you just see the pure dominance when he had the bases cleared, and when he was closing down the game, or he was coming into a situation where maybe you had a runner on first and second and two outs. He's able to give you that. It was a lot of the times that's what it was. He was giving you the one out, but the next time someone would hit the ball. So it was just a difficult. Sorry for my dog who decides that he wants to be in the podcast. Everyone just wants to be in the podcast today. That's what I get for not closing the door, but I didn't think they were going to be this crazy. But he was the guy that ended up being the closer, and leading the team in 12 saves. So looking at his stats here, he had an ERA of 2.74, and if it wasn't for that Milwaukee game where Milwaukee was just hitting everything and anything from the RailCats, he would have had a 186. We don't put a lot of stock into ERA, but sometimes you have to put quite a bit of. ERA doesn't really, it pops out at you, but really what pops out is that Milwaukee was the only game that he gave up more than 2 runs in the entire season. If you go to his point streak page and you look at all the appearances he had, there's nothing over 2. A lot of zeros, few ones, a few twos, a lot of zeros. But that last game was at 5. That's the only time. Like, impressive numbers, from him. In 42 games he played, he pitched in 49.1 innings, gave up 15 earned runs. Really could have just been 10, just because of the issue with Milwaukee. I don't know what more you would want from a player of that caliber. He really showed the dominance that you would have in this league. He was a top end pitcher, and I'm surprised that he wasn't picked up. But I know this year really wasn't big in the aspect of pitchers getting picked up. Not really a lot of people got picked up this year. I think a lot of the major league teams were holding on, or a part of the partner leagues were really holding on to players. Maybe it was more one of those like we got quite a few young people, and we're gonna kind of hold on and see what they're gonna be capable of. Looking at the MLB transactions, there's a lot of people that elected for free agency and got released, and that kind of stuff. The only thing I really wish that the MILB transactions were like on one page to a certain extent, kind of like how the American Association is, where you can kind of scroll down and look at all the dates, because a lot of times there's like 1 or 2 transaction days, or that don't have a transaction. So I wish they would kind of do. I know there's probably a lot of transactions, so it's kind of hard to do it that way. But that's getting away from that as well. I think the only news front that I had that I haven't talked about is Jared Price getting released. I don't think that was really a big surprise. I I think there's a lot of changing the guard going on, and his numbers weren't. I would say he was more inconsistent this year than he was last year. I still like the guy as a pitcher. Great guy, great personality, great pitcher. Just sometimes you have a rough year, and really the RailCats in general had a rough year. So you can't really pin one thing on one player. So I wish the best in him and what he's doing. I think he's coaching basketball right now. I think that's what I see on his Instagram and that kind of stuff. So maybe it was just that maybe he's just done playing baseball and he wants to go into teaching and coaching, and maybe that he just calls it. We don't get those kind of knowledge of what goes on with that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that's all that I really have for this podcast. Like I said, I'm gonna try to keep them, maybe short and sweet, to a certain, maybe 30 minutes, under 30 minutes, maybe go a little bit over on some areas, but I'm still playing in my head what I want to do. I'm hoping to talk to Anthony, get a hold of him, then get a hold of Lamar Rogers and kind of just talk about the season. I know season tickets are now on sale for the reserve seating for that. So go out and get your tickets. I won't be getting season. I'll probably be getting season passes, just not season tickets. I like to bring my family with when we come and that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you want great seats, great time. I'm talking to RailCats fans, so like they already know. So you guys already know. You tell other people about it, and you bring them to the Steel Yard, and we have fun. So yeah, that's gonna go ahead and wrap it up for this podcast. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Share with your family, friends, anyone that might be interested in it. They don't even have to be interested in Gary, just maybe independent baseball in general and that kind of stuff. The whole point of this podcast. I know if you listen to Indie Ball Report, they kind of at the beginning of their episode kind of gave a little bit of a small sort of shout out. Ryan had low expectations for the podcast, which I completely understand. I'm not one to say, yeah, you know what, I really expect high quality. I'm not saying this is high quality in what it is. I'm just saying I can understand it's Gary South Shore RailCats. Like, they haven't been good in years, and you got this random dude just doing it. Like, I don't really think I have high expectations for this. That I completely understand. I'm trying to make it better every day for you guys because I really do enjoy doing this kind of stuff, and I'm hoping to continue to strive more in the off season to keep more going as well. So yep, that's gonna wrap it up. I'm your host, Kyle Svedich. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, rest of your evening, whenever you're watching this, and go Cats.
The 0-2. Swing and a miss, strike three. Wrap this one up in green and white.